I think obviously right now, the ability to control frame rates, right now most people are just looking at it on a per frame kind of basis. I actually believe the innovation is going to come when we can have variable frame rate based on individual elements in the frame. And one of the arguments that I use to say that I think it's going to be important is it's clearly something that people can notice. Right now, when experiments are done, things like The Hobbit, they're just kind of scratching the surface of what might be able to be done. And when you have strongly held reactions, when you've got half the people who love it, half the people who don't love it, what that means is you actually have your hands on a technique that has an impact, that has an influence. And we just need to learn the cinematic vocabulary on how to deploy this. In many ways, I view this as similar to lens technology. So with regard to higher frame rates, clearly we have something that's visible. It evokes strong passion. With the tests for The Hobbit, the fact that there is such a reaction in this particular case with half the people embracing it, half the people saying they're not so sure. This is a clear indication that the technology has an impact, and we need to build a vocabulary of how to deploy it, how to use it, where it makes sense. And I personally don't believe that it's based on changing the frame rate for the actual just taking camera and playback camera. I think it has to do with ideally adjusting the update rate for every individual element in a shot, where the people might be best served at 24 frames per second, but a baseball coming through or a snake moving or something like that might want to have a different frame rate to give it a different emotion, a different kind of feel. We're just on the tip of exploring what some of this stuff could be, and I caution people not to just lump it all together in this shorthand that we do right now, where people refer to high dynamic range or high frame rate and everybody has a different impression, when in reality 15 years from now, the uses for some of these things will be things that most people are not able to even imagine right now. The analogy I use comparing a frame rate thing to lenses. Lenses, because they were in front of the camera and because they were analog, they evolved slowly. We had incremental changes. Lenses got better and better and better. So over the last 80 years, lenses have moved a lot. And current lenses, the Zeiss Ultra Primes, the new Leica lenses, they're pretty incredible. But with frame rate, we've been locked at 24 frames because of the technology, because having the film, the celluloid, and things like that. So I tell people, imagine if we had the lenses from 80 years ago, or imagine all we had ever had were Super Baltar lenses, and today somebody invented the Ultra Prime. Well, if you brought that out and you put it on a tripod and a camera and you shot, people would look at it and they go, I could never possibly use this. It looks too real, it looks too whatever, I couldn't shoot an actress, I can't imagine how I would use this to make movies, because they haven't built that vocabulary. But I know today that if a cinematographer is choosing a lens set for a movie, 90% of the time he's going to want the best lenses he can possibly have, and then control it down from there. So I think frame rate is sort of the same sort of thing. We're in this mode right now. It's equivalent to if you took an old fuzzy lens off and put a new first generation lens today on, and everybody went, whoa, I can't imagine using that. Once we build the vocabulary, once we learn how to use it to evoke emotion, once we use it for particular kinds of points of view, I can imagine a lot of things where it would make sense. I believe that if somebody were doing a next generation Predator movie and you wanted to do the camouflage look of a Predator, or if you had some sinister being or something that you might want to have in the frame with a different sense or feel or emotion to it, there are places where I believe you would use variable frame rate. And because the digital cinema projectors can update at 120 frames per second, you could have 24 frame action repeated multiple times and intermixed in the frame at the same time you had 60 frame or 120 frame action occurring juxtaposed. So you could have You could have, you know, people battling some evil alien monster, and the monster would be hyper real, and the people would look just like we saw people look in movies for years. So I think there's a lot of ways frame rate can be used as a creative tool. Today it's being approached as a fix for certain technical limitations to help better fuse stereo and make some of the other artifacts of digital cinema be reduced. And I really think it won't become a powerful force until it's actually utilized and controlled for creative storytelling purposes. So I think probably with regard to tools as it relates to animation, that things related to the gaming industry, that those technologies, as they continue to refine, as they get better, are going to provide avenues for beginning storytellers to try out their ideas. I think the quality will be good enough, and that's going to empower a different form of animation or an exploration of animation more so than individual point products like simulation tools or things like that. I really think that the telling stories in a game kind of environment will become much more attractive to beginning storytellers. I think that there will be a reaction to explore the availability of realism because we haven't had it before, but I think that will kind of just be something that people do because they haven't been able to do before, but then once it's no longer as much of a novelty, then I think like many things, the style will be designed to tell the story. I think that The Incredibles works very, very well in its particular style, but it didn't need to have you know, any greater degree of realism brought to it. I would hesitate to guess how long it will take before we could arbitrarily count on being able to make an independent character that didn't require that level of suspension of disbelief. I mean, people, you know, I point to Jar Jar Binks as kind of a watershed event. One of the reasons that people reacted so strongly to him as a character is, you like or hate or not or whatever, is that it crossed this point where people were actually believing that it was a character, and so they got very upset at or whatever as him as a character, as opposed to some of the other characters where it's always in the back of your mind that this is just a fantasy. So I mean, basically Jar Jar Binks set a particular stage, Benjamin Button, you know, and then we've had ups and downs in between. So it's very strange right now. I don't know what's going to happen with that set of technologies. Photoreal humans that you buy and believe in, it's pretty unclear exactly how or where you would use it. You know, people often talk about, well, then we can make movies with, you know, someone in a Humphrey Bogart or a Marilyn Monroe or something, if we could do it photoreal or believable. And my reaction is to point out to people that, you know, as far as I know, there's never been a #1 hit by an Elvis impersonator. So it's not clear to me that that's the correct way to go to actually revitalize storytelling.